Hi everyone, it's Shelly here at Bellamoto, and I'm doing some jewelry basics today for you beginners out there. And in this video I'm going to show you how to make a wrapped loop. Alright, so here we go. This one we are going to be doing a wrapped loop, which looks like this. In the previous video I did a simple loop, which looks like this. So the wrapped loop is essentially a simple loop, only you're taking the tail of your wire and you're wrapping it around the base several times, which really makes for a very solid connection that's not going to come apart very easily. Obviously also we don't want to be making simple loops like this with a very thin wire, because that would not make a very strong component to your jewelry. So my general rule of thumb, and I do break this according to what kind of project I'm making, what kind of materials I'm using, but my general rule of thumb is I use 20 gauge and thicker. I will allow myself to do a simple loop and feel okay with that. Any thinner, so 22 gauge or thinner, I almost always go with a wrapped loop, because you are just going to have, it's going to be stronger that way. So here we go. What I have right here is a 24 gauge wire and round nose pliers, of course. And I am going to just stick my wire in there, and same way as we did with a simple loop, I'm going to use my left thumb to kind of bend the wire around the round nose, and I'm going to rotate my right hand forward. To complete the loop, I'm going to release my round nose, rotate it back towards me, and then complete my loop. Now the difference being, you're going to have this tail here that's in the way. So we just want to allow that to come through. And again, the same way as with the simple loop, we need to make that bend there, or break that neck, so to speak, so that our loop is sitting directly on top of the wire as we want it to. So I'm just going to slide my round nose back in there. And if you recall from making the simple loop, I usually use my pointer finger and just rest it there and make that little bend so that our loop is sitting on top of the wire just how we want it to. So now you have a couple of options for how to hold this. We were going to wrap this tail around the wire. One option is to just continue to use your round nose and switch that into your left hand. This is if you are a lefty, or sorry, a righty, of course. You lefties will be doing things the opposite way. And then I'm going to pick up my chain nose, and I'm going to use my chain nose to just wrap this around like a nice, neat little coil. Keep your wraps nice and close to each other. Looks nice and neat. There you go. Looks just like that. And then come in with your flush cutters. Sorry, your flush cutters. Not flesh cutters, we hope not. Your flush cutters, meaning they cut flush. They're flat on the top, so they make a nice flush cut that is not pointed. And then I come in with my chain nose and I just kind of bend that little tail down so that it's not sticking out. And we have something looking like that. And again, just as with the simple loop, you can always come in with your chain nose pliers and kind of flatten or do any adjusting that you feel you might need to do to have it looking perfect. And if we are making a link here, I'm going to add my bead on at this point. And I'm going to want to start a little bit further up the line this time, because I want to leave room to make my loops down here. So I'll start up about that far, And again, this is one of those things that with practice you will really just be able to eyeball that stuff easier. So same way, we rotate forward, rotate just your pliers back, and then rotate that forward again. And at this point, I'm just going to rotate my pliers back to make that little bend. So we've got our loop sitting directly on top, just how we want it. Now, the last time I held my round nose pliers in like that and just switched it to my non-dominant hand. Another option would be to hold on to this with a chain nose pliers. And I actually really kind of prefer this. It does require setting down one tool and picking up another, but you're kind of just really holding that circle nice and flat and protected. I think you have a little less opportunity to bend things around. You can always correct that too, but you know, just play with things. Everybody is comfortable doing things a little bit differently, so just play with some different ways and see what feels comfortable and seems to work out the best for you. And again, I left a little more room maybe than I intended. I'm getting a couple extra wraps out of that side, but that is perfectly okay. Come in with the flush cutters and nip that off, and I'm just going to come in and kind of tuck that tail in with my chain nose. And again, I can straighten out my loop if I need to with my chain nose. And there we go, there's my link. Pretty simple. And you can also do this when you are making drops. Show you just one more time. There's my 6mm Swarovski bicone on there, and this I believe is a 21 gauge head pin, so this will be a little bit thicker to wrap, but that is okay. So I'm going to go up maybe about that far and make a smaller loop this time perhaps. So again, my left thumb is bracing on here. Rotate my hand forward, release, rotate it back towards me, and then complete my loop. I've got my tail sticking out there. I'm going to make that bend, breaking the neck, so that my loop is directly on top of the bead and directly on top of the wire. And at this point, you can keep your round nose pliers in there, switch it to your non-dominant hand, and then just start wrapping. And as I said, this is, I believe, a 21 gauge wire that this head pin is made of. So this is a little bit thicker, and you have to be a little bit more deliberate in your wrapping movements than with the 24 gauge. Now I left just the perfect amount of space, so sometimes you don't end up with a long tail. And you just kind of use the end of your chain nose to make those little movements to get your tail tucked all the way in and wrapped around. And there you go. Your perfect little droplet. And that's it, folks. That is a wrapped loop. You are well on your way to being a master jewelry maker once you get these few basics under your belt. Happy creating, everybody.